the film starts focusing on water, an element that is essential for life, for evolution, but also for rebirth. Water throughout the story has been related to hope. The images and sounds make us feel as we are in a hot day. This water is not the sea or a natural lake. It is in fact an artificial one, on a crater that was created as a result of Eva Zero's explosion that caused the death of our beloved Rei 2 in episode 23. It is also the same lake in which Shinji met Kaoru for the first time in episode 24. We can see a statue without a head, a constant reminder on Shinji's actions in the last episode, what he did to his friend, to Kaoru. We are shown to awake Shinji. Given the setting, the audience might think that he is sweating. But is he? His hair is also soaking wet. A way to Shinji to have his head wet is because he submerged it underwater. If you've been watching my content for the last few months, you might remember that I made some emphasis on how Shinji cannot swim. This is very well established on episode 16, when Shinji fought Leliel, while talking to his reflection. Thus this is a clear indication that at that point, Shinji tried to take his own life, just like Asuka did at the beginning of episode 24, and as we will confirm in the next sequence, this is a fact that was later recognized by Anno himself. Soon, we will see a transformer falling from a utility pole. Utility poles, or telephone poles, are used by Anno to emphasize communication, or lack of. The detachment of the transformer reminds us of Kaoru's head. After his failed attempt on suicide, Shinji decides to go and see Asuka, who is comatose, asking her for help as Misato Ayanami scares him. The sequence will include one of the most memorable and famous scenes on anime history, one that has been source of many memes but also tributes. And of course, I am talking about the scene in which Shinji relieves himself, let's say. Evangelion is more than a story. It's a personal journey, told from the perspective of a twisted, depressed mind of the brilliant and talented director Hideaki Anno. This is not about mindless monsters and giant robots. It's about depression, suicidal thoughts, and the value of self-discovery. This is reflected on the characters' development. Throughout the story, we experience how these characters, that were presented as very basic at first, evolve into very complex figures. Each one of them will have to face and fight their inner demons. As a result, they change their behavior and perspectives. A deep journey in which only 26 episodes were enough to connect all the dots, and over the years, supplemental reading material and video games were used to expand its lore. And this is it basically. Anno is Evangelion, and Evangelion is Anno. As a result, and after the original TV episodes 25 and 26 were aired, a mob of angry fans issued death threats to the production staff, Gainax, and to Anno himself. These messages will be featured later on in the film. Gainax, after this event, saw an opportunity, a profitable one. Under the principle that there is no better news than bad news, the production of a remake of the ending was greenlighted, and these threats were used to market the story as one that was born from controversy. People will get curious and Evangelion as a property more valuable. The production of the film was, well, Anno-esque, which means they came with some troubles. You see, the end of Evangelion was not the first Evangelion movie. That honor corresponds to another one that has been forgotten over the years: Death and Rebirth. This film was premiered in Japanese theaters on March 1997, 3 months before the end of Evangelion, and is divided in 2 parts. As the title states, the first part is titled Death, and the second part is titled Rebirth. Death is a 72 minutes recap on the events of the first 24 episodes from Neon Genesis Evangelion. It included animation improvements and the introduction of some of the extended cutscenes from episodes 21 to 24, and it basically served to set the premise for the ending. to show the audience the relevant parts of the story. Death was later re-edited and retitled Death True the following year, and a few months later, Death True Square, which is the version you can easily find nowadays in streaming services like Netflix. The second part of the movie, titled Rebirth, is exactly what you think it is. The first 24 minutes unedited version of the end of Evangelion. It's not that they will do that again in the future, right? Right? From the GSSDF invasion to NERV until the MPEs are deployed. Because it was a work in progress, you can find some differences in the editing between what it was shown to the public and the final work in End of Evangelion. Death and Rebirth got mixed reviews, and the film being edited and retitled so many times over the years that the original version has been forgotten. Even the Evangelion subreddit says that viewing is optional. But if you are an Evangelion Uber fan, you know there's no such thing as optional. With the title End of Evangelion, Anno wanted to be clear that this was in fact the actual end of this story, and that he will never provide another ending again. Few years later, Rebuild was announced, but we don't need to talk about that. But what about the TV ending, original episodes 25 and 26? I already did a video going over both of these episodes. You will find the link down below. The end of Evangelion is the actual end to the story, the canonical one, and replace both of those episodes. Nevertheless, it's still in essence a very similar ending, but this time is clearer on the events that led to instrumentality. And the development of the story is crueler, for in fact the end of Evangelion is not a happy ending, as the original episodes 25 and 26 supposed to be, but a dramatic one. This could be interpreted as a response from Anno to the backlash of the original episodes, as he did state at the time that he was very happy with the original ending, the ending that he chose to give to the story. Thus, throughout the end of Evangelion, Anno was predisposed to get his revenge, and release all his anger to those that criticized him heavily for his original ending. Those fans were those that Anno was addressing with the Asuka Hospital scene. Sexuality has been touched throughout the series in a soft and careful way, but now Anno decided that he should address it in a more aggressive manner. This scene portrays what the average otaku is in Anno's mind, a sexually repressed individual that won't care about a female character development or current situation, as long as it is the ideal woman forged in their heads. For Asuka is in fact the most recognizable face in the property, and has been for over 25 years. Here we have two messages, one that came from Shinji himself, and the other from Anno. Shinji tells to the unconscious Asuka that he wants everything to return the way it was. And even though Asushin is not a very healthy relationship, Shinji do miss his friend. The message from Anno is clear, and is what follows. As Shinji cannot get what he wants, he starts shaking Asuka's body aggressively and her chest is uncovered, intentionally locks the door, and proceeds to relieve himself while watching a vulnerable and defeated Asuka's bare breast. He even recognizes that he's terrible. This is Anno's critique to the otaku culture, some of them his own audience. We then jump to the command center where Maya, Hyuga, and Aoba are discussing the future of NERV. This is essential for the audience, as they need to understand that NERV's purpose has been fulfilled, for the angels has been destroyed and humanity saved. However, one more angel remains, one that Kaoru warned about in episode 24, and that is humanity itself. Lilims will be the last angel. Then we jump to Misato. She's standing exactly where she saw Kaoru in episode 24, and is telling the audience about instrumentality. And even though across the story we had been teased on the ultimate end of the project, Misato this time gives it straightforward. Instrumentality purpose is to turn everyone into one. She also says something really important, and that is that Seal will try to use the Evangelion units, not aid them, to achieve that purpose. But we will get more into that later on. What about Lilith? Well, that is the reason why we jump to Seal, or Cele, where they explain that it's unfeasible due to the inaccessible speed of Longinus, now on the moon, where it landed after Rey threw it to destroy Arael in episode 22. Seal does count with replica of the spear though, as we will see later on, and thus the only way moving forward is using a replica of Lilith. Evangelion Unit 1. Fuyutsuki comments are ambiguous, and lack of clear explanation. It can be argued that the nature of its ambiguity comes from episode 21, those conversations that he had with Yui Kari, which are not very clear either. This is that humanity's purpose is to create Evas, and given the context the goal is to force evolution. Monolith 9 states that we, and we he means Seal, is not in this position to renounce to their human form just to get inside Eva 1 as an arc. The following dialogue has a ton of religious connotations, and even though Anno rarely refers to an arc that will save humanity in the whole story, Yamashita in his spin-off Anima does make strong references of the existence of such arc. In the Bible, there is a depiction of 3 arcs. The most relevant arc for this story is Noah's, for he had a premonition in which humanity will be punished by God, and he is given the task to build an ark, in which he will be in charge to save what he thinks deserves to be saved before a massive universal flood will condemn the planet to start over. Evangelion Unit 1 will serve a similar purpose. Gendo states very clearly that using the Evangelion Unit was not Seal's original plan, from which he ends Seal's religious speech, stating that from death there is no rebirth. Seal then, after understanding that Gendo had a different plan, and at the end there is no doubt that he has betrayed them, condemn him to death. Fuyutsuki ends the sequence stating that humanity exists because of its will to exist, and that is the reason why Yui remained within Unit 1. This quote is very important for the story as a whole, as Fuyutsuki, who had a very close relationship with Yui, seemed to know more about her motivations than Gendo ever did. The real reasons and motivations for Yui taking that decision are still unclear, or if the way that everything went down that day of her disappearance went exactly as planned. We immediately jump to Rei 3, whose face seems Yui more than ever. But this is very contradictory, as Rei is now more her own as she has ever been before, as she leaves her cold, tiny apartment for one last time in the middle of the night, leaving behind Gendo's even more destroyed glasses. Rei has made up her mind. Her emancipation is complete. When the time comes, she will do what she feels fit. We check in on Shinji. He is with his SDAT, only that this time there's no music. This might indicate Kaoru's absence, as Kaoru has always been related to music. In both Neon Genesis Evangelion and Rebuild, Kaoru now is gone, there is no more music, the battery is completely drowned, zeros mark the screen. The end is upon him. We will retake it from here on my next installment, as we take a closer look to the end of Evangelion. I publish Evangelion and other anime content each week. If you don't want to miss the next episode, be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell notification button. If you have already but still feel that you are missing on the notification, consider to follow me on Twitter at MidSans, or join my Discord for free, where I provide daily updates on the channel, Evangelion news, and current and classic anime insights and discussions. You will find the link on the description section down below. Guys, thank you all so much for watching, and as always I wish you all a wonderful day.